everybody. I'm Matt Valley. Welcome to episode number 120 of the Rock and Roll Research Podcast, where we share the super cool backstories and side gigs of the research and insights pros that you trust. I'm really excited today to welcome my friend Victoria Sakal to the program. Now, let me tell you a little something about Victoria. So, Victoria is the head of growth for a really cool company called Wonder, right? Which is askwonder.com. And they have this on-demand research platform that produces these really great specific types of reports, usually inside of 24 hours that are fully cited. So it's not really primary research, but more taking advantage of the tremendous wealth of terabytes and terabytes of data that already exist out there, and they do really, really cool work, fulfilling a very important niche in this space. So very cool. Now, she has been in research for a while, but let me tell you something real quick. So when I was growing up, when I was a young child, all the time that I had outside of school, I was primarily spending playing baseball, basketball, whole lot of Dungeons and Dragons, lots of records in my room, and then just general sloth-like lethargy. But that doesn't describe Victoria's upbringing at all. It doesn't work that way when there's a family business involved. So we're going to hear about all that and more on today's podcast. So welcome to the show, Victoria.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you. I'm very excited about it. So it's a different kind of niche of the insight space and really cool. Excited to get into it. But before we get started, a lot of people know I've been promoting this Magic Mind brain fuel. It's really been working for me, so I keep using it. It's got lots of good natural ingredients, all that good stuff. It's good for you. It doesn't taste awful, and it clears your head, gives you lots of energy, all good stuff. So I'm going to go down the hatch and I'm going to get started.
Sounds great. I've actually tried Magic Mind and I endorse everything that you said. They're not sponsoring me to say that, but I totally corroborate everything you said.
Yeah, awesome. I really love it. It makes me feel really good. Gives me a nice little jump that lasts a good long time. And like I said, it doesn't taste awful. I'm starting to like it, actually. Well, I'm glad you
Way
tried.
better than AG1. Everyone's advocating for that. I would choose Magic Mind all day.
All right, Magic Mind. Check it out. It's magicmind.com/rock and roll. And you can use the code rock and roll 20 to get a really nice discount on a single time purchase or subscription. So check it out. All right. So let's get started, Victoria. Let's start talking research. It's always interesting to hear how people first get their start in research. So tell us a little bit about your origin story and then take us up to what you're doing now.
Sure thing. I will say I never in a million years dreamed of being a researcher, a career researcher at that. My family will remember how much I have a vendetta against New Brunswick because of a certain project in grade school where I was sitting with all these books and thought research was the worst thing in the world. It was so hard to do, and why do we need research? So I've yet to be to New Brunswick, though I'm named after Victoria, Canada, and we love the country. So all that to say, fast forward to high school, I took a marketing class and a business class.
Yeah,
Hated the marketing class because who wants to be doing ads all day? Not for me. That was fun, but thank you. Loved business, and so ended up was lucky enough to make it to Wharton, and there I took another marketing class, Marketing 101, who the professor is still a very dear friend, not only a mentor but also a friend of mine, and kind of opened my eyes to more of the strategy side of marketing. There's brand, there's go to
sure.
market, all these words that we have now. But I still love numbers. I actually thought I would be a math minor. So lots of
Yeah,
learning about myself throughout college where I suddenly liked marketing and also realized you can't really necessarily build a whole career out of math. But the intersection of the two is what led me to my first job.
yeah,
I
right
did
on.
brand strategy consulting at Kantar, so got to do research, live in insights, really get to know all the methodologies and how you go from we need to learn this information to well, here's how we're going to get that information, but then also take it into now that you have this information, here's how you act on it, and here's where it goes. So that's kind of the story. I landed through a little bit of a circuitous route, but I have been in the industry since, and it's such an interesting, fascinating space that it will never go away. You can make claims about consulting and whether, that's here to stay as well, but we always need information in order to make better decisions. So I feel pretty confident from that perspective. We'll be around for a while.
Yeah, sure, sure. That's great. I love the story. So tell me a little bit about Wonder. It's a newer company to me, but has a really, really interesting offering. So let's hear more about that.
Yeah, so Wonder, exactly as you said, is an on-demand desk research platform. The premise is we as professionals do a lot of primary research. We get information from a lot of different sources, but we also spend a lot of time on Google and now on
Yeah,
LLMs. But the challenge with that is you're opening 50 different tabs, you're checking hyperlinks, you're corroborating sources, or when was this published? And is this BuzzFeed article something I can, cite this stat in this deck to my CEO? Probably not. So our solution is as much AI driven as it is human powered, where we
yeah,
use a lot of different custom agents to do things that are very tailored to competitive intelligence, for example, or sentiment analysis. But then our human researchers also know what good looks like. They have the context of, the business strategy question that you're looking to get answered. You combine those two and you can get a lot more done in a lot less time. As you said, we're delivering these robust reports usually in a matter of hours, if not, one day versus weeks and weeks of you sitting there Googling and,
yeah.
hoping you find accurate sources. So it's been a fun space to play in after living in most of the primary world for most of my career.
Yeah, yeah. There's I have two reactions to that. One is this sounds like the most plug and play, most practical use of AI in the insight space that I've heard. It's like we all know that AI does this very well, summarizing, right? So it's kind of a
Mhm.
no-brainer. It's something I would trust as like a first cut. It's not like you're taking it to the CEO, you're doing some desk research before you're getting started, and boom, there it is. Really great starting point. Um, but then there's the human element too that takes it a step further. And the thing that just jumped out to me is like so often when we work on, let's say, like big strategic engagements, which describe a lot of side projects, desk research, if it isn't baked into the process, it should be every time. And I think a lot of people are just like, oh, yeah, maybe I'll do a Google search or two or whatever, and that's desk research because they can't figure it out. They don't know which source it is or whatever. And so this seems to really fill that bill.
Yeah, we're big advocates of starting with the known knowns. There's someone has asked a similar enough question. There's also the element of known knowns, that's information in your organization or research someone on another team might have done, which is a whole other can of worms. We all know it can be tricky to like
Yeah,
find what else has been asked and what's been answered. But yeah, I'm
sure.
100% with you there, to know and scan and be able to get really smart really fast on what's been covered. And then you kind of just take it a step further and instead of starting at zero where we think we have this question and let's design some primary research or otherwise, we actually can start, halfway down the pike and take it that much further then with our primary research, or just save a lot of time because we're building on, standing on the shoulders of giants type of thing. We're building
Yeah.
on the foundation of knowledge that already exists, so why not take advantage of it?
Totally. And a lot of times you don't need to do primary research because you've already
Right,
found the answer, right?
right.
So cool. All right, so let's talk about your backstory a little bit. It was funny listening to you talk about your academic interests and let's say disinterests, because knowing kind of your backstory and anytime when it's a family business, when it's all about getting stuff done, right? It's like, I'll forget about the theory. We got to get stuff done, right? So tell me about that and your mom's business and how you were involved in that.
Yeah, sure thing. So, my mom has been running her baking business for as long as I've been alive. And so growing up, we not only saw how a business was run in, our everyday lives, but of course we were, helping out around the busy times of the year, the holidays or whatnot. But you are as much attentive to get it out. Here's the deadline. Here's what, quality looks like. And mom's going to be checking this. So it better be perfect because someone's paying for it. Literally our jobs were things like opening up the boxes, not touching, even the goods. But then also watching her magic really with customer experience and relationship building and word of
Yeah.
mouth and all of these things. This is way before really even like she didn't have a website. Instagram was something we set up for her when I was probably post college. So like this was just all building a relationship and a network in our community, which kind of got that going. There's definitely an entrepreneurial spirit in my family and even in hers that probably is somewhat in my DNA. But then working at a hair salon in high school, which is another, I grew up in a small town, and you have these businesses where one bad experience can definitely jeopardize your trajectory. But on the flip
Sure.
side, and opening and being, one of the early kind of front desk managers of this new hair salon, every good experience is both a confidence forward, and even things like the smell when you walk in and the coffee that you offer while someone's waiting makes
Yeah.
their wait seem shorter. All of that really comes together, and really kind of got my eye trained toward the customer experience and the full journey and the full element of like customer satisfaction is like it's the classic thing. It's not just about the haircut, but when you choose this salon versus the next one, which feels very transactional, there's a little bit of a reason why. Beyond that, I think I always like pay homage to the fact that being Greek, you have this element of like care and hospitality and taking care of other people's needs. And that can come through in consulting and wanting to solve the client's problem, but also extreme empathy for customers. And, even now in my current role, I'm a bit more, in the marketing side of things, but how would I, as a buyer, want to feel? Would this feel like a slimy experience for me? Because then we're not doing it. Or is this product something that would add value to their lives? Because if not, then like, what are we doing here? Is kind of uh, in the undertone of a lot of what I do as well. So those are kind of the three biggest threads for me. There's other kind of fun facts in there, but we'll stick to those for now, unless you want to know more.
Yeah, cool. Actually, the one I know about, so I know you were a competitive athlete in high school as well. So I don't know how you kept it all together. But now you also have a side gig where you've got kind of a foot in the real estate world, and I'd love to hear what that's all about and how you manage that alongside your career.
Yeah, sure. All I'll say about track is like, the accountability. We all just probably witnessed the Olympics of you're on your own, right? You're a member of a team contributing to everybody's success, but like when you're holding the baton, it's on you for that moment. So that obviously translates to corporate America in some ways as well.
For sure.
The rental property, again, I grew up in a small town and lived there my whole life. Know, all of these different types of businesses, know the demand for the Finger Lakes area of upstate New York. There's always people traveling there for graduations or weddings or whatnot. So the rental property was born out of the low interest rate environment of
Yeah.
the pandemic. I got very lucky. So that's been a fun venture, but it's the same thing. I mean, I actually have a very strong stance on property management that I manage. Like I have someone who can help me when, God forbid, a pipe bursts or whatever. But I
Sure.
am the person that my guests experience when there's an issue, when there's good feedback, if they want a recommendation on a hair salon or where to go get a
Yeah.
manicure, if they, want a winery or whatever. I'm not yet comfortable handing the reins off there because, again, this customer experience piece, they're not just renting the house, but you want them to have a great stay in the area. So that's been
Yeah.
that whole little adventure as well. It's not passive. PSA or everybody who thinks short-term rentals are passive, they're not, but there's a lot of learning and joy to come from that too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I was accidental landlord for 5 years, and at first I wanted my guests to be very comfortable, and then I wanted to have a very comfortable walk out the front door and never come back. So
Your
I
words,
had too
not
much of the
mine.
bad stuff. I had too much of the bad stuff, I must tell you. Okay, so obviously, I mean, it really feels like when you grow up this way, um, it's going to impact your approach when you have a professional career. So tell me kind of what you learned from that upbringing that you've applied to your work life.
I think the crux of it is a lot of this curiosity, and the problem solving. So people have
Sure.
needs, and is there a better way that we can solve this? And
Yeah,
also just why are things happening? There's always multiple factors at play, but digging into the different layers and understanding either something that can be controlled or if there's an interesting insight there. There's a lot of that comes with, even, my rental property. Why is this season looking like it is? What can I do to maybe double down on the fall and create new experiences around, fall
Sure.
foliage and peak week in upstate New York. So I think a lot of it is just never, it's this element of like kind of never being satisfied is probably the common denominator of both. As much in like, ambition and like trying to accomplish things, but why, like, if someone is not satisfied with their experience, how can we improve it? And then I'm not
Sure.
satisfied with that answer, let's keep digging until we get something that's really going to stick or add great value back to them. But yeah, I don't know, this element of like solving other people's problems, at least in the business context, is, I guess, too addicting.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And let's think about like you growing up with your mom's bakery, a lot of the feedback that you rely on is just person to person. If they tell you something good or if they've got some complaint, they just let you know. It's not out in the public sphere. But I suppose with a short-term rental, you've got ratings out there and feedback out there. Does that sort of change the landscape at all for you or no?
Yeah, I mean, I think even going back to the like bakery example as well, this whole element of people's expectations versus their reality and lived experience is at the crux of everything, right? And so my mom continuously blows it out of the water. People expect a lot out of her, and she always knocks it out of the park. The rental is interesting because like I've gotten bad reviews because the water level is low, and I'm like, not Mother Nature. I'd love to like
Yeah,
fill up the lake for you, but unfortunately,
right.
like I didn't control the drought this year. But then you feel yourself. I mean, I'm a wreck when like somebody we had like a delayed trash pickups from July 4th, and we had a guest curious about the trash that was on the property, and you feel it in your gut until they check out, and then there's going to be like a review, and you're gonna have to take it up with the platform, and it just like ruins the whole
Yeah.
experience. Which is all to say, like, I'm here trying to make sure people have a good experience. We literally drove up to the property and took the trash off. It still didn't do the job for him. So there's just interesting elements of like what people are, you really see and feel like what people are measuring is what gets done and optimized against. But I also feel it very, it's interesting being in this space and you watch like why companies are doing things, and what they're optimizing for, and you're evaluating their customer experience more than maybe the next average person on the street. So the
Sure.
perspective is helpful. I don't know if it helps with like the anxiety around my guests, but it is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. All right, so let's talk insights. Let's get back to that side. Since a whole lot of what you have done has been sort of this desk research and finding the insight, you said standing on the shoulders of giants using what's already been used. Uh, Curious to know from your perspective as you look out into the future of insights, what do you see? What's going to be more important?
I think it does dovetail back to what you mentioned before, that AI is particularly useful for
Yeah.
certain pieces of research. We have a pretty clear stance on tech-enabled services being the future of research, and I think that's exactly right. That 1 plus 1 equals 3 here, where you have the speed and the horsepower of AI to take away a lot of the grunt work and the commoditized pieces and the collecting of information that we as researchers tend to spend a lot of time on, and we can start to move then into connecting dots, which means not only so what and what's going on here and why, but also primary and secondary and social listening and expert interviews, and you just get way more robust and holistic insight for any of the things that you're looking to accomplish. So I would call it more of like a 360 vantage point, because you suddenly have more bandwidth and horsepower because you're super powered by this like bionic arm of whatever form that technology takes. And beyond that, I think this idea of strategic insights, moving away from an order taker function
Yeah.
that just does primary research, that you got to submit a request and design your whole research, and then here you go and on to the next widget that comes into the request factory. It becomes, how do we help surface opportunities and again pull from this whole cocktail of different types of information and data, and then derive insights and then figure out the whole trajectory of decisions that will come from that
Yeah.
information.
Yeah, yeah, super cool. All right, so I like to ask this question because, and I like to ask it of really busy people like yourself, right? Because there's so much media out there. We all consume media, but when you're very time constrained, you become very choiceful. So I'm curious to know if you think about it can be, big broad question can be for insight, inspiration, or enjoyment. What media earns your time?
Yeah, the main buckets for me are they tend to be reading and podcasts. So I'll read and subscribe to a lot of different newsletters, which was a very conscious exercise back, even when I was at Kantar, I felt like I was living in my clients' projects, but not in their world. And so to be staying very smart on what was happening outside of their four walls and, our business solution, I've built this habit of like reading newsletters and subscribing now. There's obviously infinite amounts of newsletters, and I'm like at the gym, like I can't stay there for 6 hours to read all the newsletters as much as I wish I could. But so the newsletters piece is one. Scanning LinkedIn, although I have my beef with what it actually is surfacing and versus what I want to be learning about.
Yeah.
Podcasts are great. Again, there's a lot of very helpful, interesting context. But for me, it's always an element of what are the frameworks or processes or kind of concepts that people are grappling with, which could be specific to insights. And there's also an element, however, of beyond. So intersecting different ideas or disciplines or domains. And what can I learn from things like nutrition or psychology or random bucket of science, and think about how that relates to business, innovation, insights, and the like. But it's kind of a mix of a good potpourri of different sources.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Cool. All right, so we've gotten this far into this episode already, Victoria, and we haven't talked rock and roll at all. So we would be remiss if we don't touch on the topic of rock and roll. So this is the important question. I have no idea what the answers are going to be, but I'm so curious. So let's say, Victoria, you're stranded on a desert island, right? You have three albums of your choosing to keep you company for the rest of your days. What are they?
Well, my millennial brain, first of all, wants to provoke the album question
You
because we
can.
burned CDs back in the day. I know you can burn your own record of like who's on it. I
I
think to
have
the
been
point,
I have been
go on.
usurped on this. I have been usurped in the, Spotify world. Lots of people take issue with the framing of this question. So
I
I'll
know. I mean,
keep in
actually, that
mind.
would be a smart hack. If I just said my day list, then I get access to all of the music, right?
Yeah, fair enough, fair
um,
enough.
I think for me, if there's one album that I had to like just pick off of the shelf as it was sold at the store, I think I would probably go with ABBA's Greatest Hits because there's nothing
Yeah,
that a little like dancing queen doesn't enliven while you're on a
for
beach,
sure.
especially.
Good
Um,
vibes. Good vibes.
Mhm. If I could curate a couple of my own, I think there's some mix of like 90s hip hop with a little, Mary J. Blige, Rick Ross, Akon, Nicki
Yeah,
Minaj, just to keep it happy.
I like it.
And then the third bucket, um, this is more of like the brain detached bucket, which I would either say something classical or I did play jazz for a while, so maybe like a Louis Armstrong, Etta James, or
Yeah,
go with a
yeah.
mix of like Daddy Yankee, where I don't speak Spanish, so you just like have the whole vibe, but I'm not like my brain isn't like listening and like feeling the emotion of the songs and resonating. So I just gave a lot of answers. It was more than three, but again, I'm burning CDs here, so
Well, that's a playlist I'll sit down and I'll groove to a bit. So I
for
approve.
all the moods, right?
Love it. Yeah,
All the need states.
that's right. Lots of good vibes. Cool. Excellent. Well, Victoria, this has been a super awesome chat. Glad we had a chance to sit down and do it. Really hope that we intersect in person at some point, sometime soon, conference or something, something like that.
Absolutely.
So we
I
can continue this
know.
chat. I do want to make a quick reminder, Magic Mind, check that out, www.magicmind.com/rock and roll. Check out the offers there if that's something of interest. We both swear by it. Well, maybe swear by it is strong, but we both like it. It's worked for both of us, so good deal. All right, Victoria, let's definitely stay in touch. Let's talk soon. Rock and roll.
All right.